Good afternoon to you all and happy holiday. So can I be heard?
Thank you. Yes, you can. We can hear you.
Great, great. So let me first of all say happy holiday to all of you. Happy Independence Anniversary. And I'm really excited to have listened to our CEO and our consultants who we call Mojo. And we've met several times here in Ghana and also in essay. And I would like to commend her for giving us a very good head start because I believe she's done a lot of the work for us. So, like you rightly said, I'm head of corporate communications. Actively, let me say, I'm still the substantive head, and I'm also recently in February been appointed the acting general manager for sustainability and shared value. And that means combining sustainability and also the MTN Ghana Foundation. Yeah, so what is corporate authority? I like to add corporate to authority because I believe we are all talking about corporate authority and not just any authority. And I believe that corporate authority is having the credibility, the trust, and the insights to perform your role as expected. And so it doesn't mean just in corporate communications. If you're a sustainability person, and I know that a lot of our communications people also combine sustainability. And for me, being a person of authority is combining credibility, trust that you can perform, and also having the insight to be able to perform your functions creditably to impact the bottom line. And I believe that Mojo has spoken extensively about how we as communications people need to be able to influence the bottom line. So we always have to look at how our stakeholders are seen as our CEOs, other executives, other boardroom members, and our own peers, and of course our team members. And if you have that authority, of course, you command the respect that you are able to perform your functions creditably. And we know that influencing the bottom line means that you must understand the business. You must have the business acumen. So, I mean, gone were the days when people felt that PR people were just there to do the press releases and also to do the media reviews and all that. It goes beyond that. You have to understand the business environment. And yes, Mojo was right. You have to look at even what is happening in the geopolitics. I mean, at our last corporate affairs forum just a few weeks ago, the entire session was about understanding the geopolitical world. And we just came out of this, and a few weeks later, boom, we see what is happening between
Right.
the US and Iran. And all this has implications for the business. So, as a
Absolutely.
business person and as a PR person, you are not just there to issue press releases or to be told what to do. Let me put it this way, to be told what to do. Your plans and your insights and your communication strategies must always be ahead of the business. You have to read ahead of the business and say, this is what I see coming, and these are the exposures, and these are the mitigations, and this is what I think we need to put in to be able to position ourselves favorably for what the business is facing now. So we always have to be ahead. And if you're a PR person who is always being told what to do, there's a lot that you need to do because I mean that's not PR. You have to understand the business and how you can shape the business environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgina. This is like you've already delved into the discussions. That's so insightful. And I like the fact that you made mention that we don't have to sit down and wait to be told what to do. Then we are all not ready for that authority that we want to exert. We are not ready for the leadership that we want to be, being seen as the strategic leadership, playing that role that we always want to be. If you are sitting down to be told this has already happened, the reactive nature, we're looking at being more proactive than reacting to situations. So thank you for the intro. So, Phoebe, if you could unmute yourself, also in your own words, what does corporate, I like that distinction so much, corporate authority in this context mean to you? and then we can delve into my questions.
Okay, thank you, Suzy, and thank you to Women in PR for convening this important discussion. So we've heard a lot about corporate reputation, and one thing for me is that when we talk about corporate reputation, then we can also link that to strategic communications and all of that. And we know that this sits at the intersection of risk management, leadership credibility, and then the stakeholder trust. And a lot of international bodies have emphasized that communication leaders must operate as strategic advisors to C-suite, which is very important. And so we are not just tactical implementers, but we are strategic advisors to C-suite. So what we do mostly is to make sure that we have or we position the reputation of the organization that we communicate for or we work for in the right frame, in the right minds, and make sure that we gain stakeholder trust. So for me, that's what I would say. And just to add this to it, I'm sure we'll come back to it later, but there's been a lot of research around corporate reputation and also when it comes to building stakeholder trust for your organization. Because right now, a lot of stakeholders and a lot of customers do not only look at what you communicate to them, they don't only buy in what you communicate to them, but also the trust that they have for your brand is determined by the customers and also the stakeholders. So how are you making sure that you are positioning your organization in that light to gain that positive corporate reputation for your brand?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. We seem to have so much already in the first intro. Phoebe, thank you for enlightening us on that. And like we are all trying to talk about, PR goes beyond what your industry or what your organization is doing or what your organization does. It goes far beyond that. So now let me delve straight in, and I would like to start with Georgina. So you made a clear distinction that there's corporate authority, women in PR. But in your experience, I want you to let us know what distinguishes women who have successfully secured a seat in the executive suite from those who remain in the periphery. So you could have two women in P no, I wouldn't say women, two communicators having probably the same expertise, the same level of education, the qualification, but one person is at the executive level and the other is maybe in between. What distinguishes these two people in your experience? If you could share that with us.
Yes, so in my experience, like I said, what distinguishes a strategic PR person from one that is just doing, um, should I say, business as usual, is the person's understanding of the business and also positioning themselves strategically to understand and to contribute meaningfully to the success of the business. And so it requires a lot of planning. And we know that strategic PR starts with having a plan. And so it amazes me that, there are people who are doing PR. So for example, the year is ending, going into 2026. Ahead of 2026, you should be thinking about your PR plan. Businesses in August, and for us in MTN, by July, August, we will be having our business planning sessions. We'll be doing our budget. So by July, August, which is the beginning of the year, you should have an overview of how the year has been, what successes the business has had, what the influencing factors are. So from regulatory, from business, from pricing, from stakeholder influences, their reputation issues. So all this will inform what is going to happen in the following year. And so you have to start, with your monitoring reports, your insights, your customer sentiments, your public sentiments. You should now have been tracking everything that is happening within the environment and putting your plans into action. And so at the same time as the business is planning, of course, you would make an input into the business plan. The planners will come and ask you, what are you envisaging for the following year? And you should have your data to back it. This has been the trend. This is what I foresee in 2026. And this is what I'm recommending as the plan. This is my strategic plan. This is what I think our messages should be. These are the insights backing them. And so for me, your strategic planning is very important. And I believe that the difference between an ordinary practitioner and a strategic one is the one that does the planning ahead of time. You are always on point with your tracking, with your data, interpreting the data, and then also updating the business about the regulatory changes, the stakeholder sentiments, the trust issues. For us in MTN, there's a reputation index report that you can use. So you can infer from what the reputation index is saying, the different categories of stakeholders. What did your research show? And you can, for example, borrow from your net promoter score, which is the NPS. What are customers saying? And what should we be doing? And so I believe that if you position yourself as a strategic planner, it makes you very valuable because people know that they need you to be able to make the required decisions in planning what the business should do, even before the year ends and also going into the following year. So for me, one of the big things or the major things that makes you an authority in your space as a PR person is your strategic planning. And strategic planning, like I said, you have to put a lot of things into consideration to advise the business. And I think that this is very important. What the public is expecting, what your priorities are, we'll go into more discussions. But for me, this is very important. Your strategic plan must be on point, and it should be based on the insights, what the data is saying, and what the experience has been.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So this gives a prelude to my next question to Phoebe. So Phoebe, I'd like to bring you on this based on something that Georgina mentioned in terms of being a strategic person, the structural and the environmental side. We realize that many organizations still frame communications. So from Georgina's perspective, we're trying to see the difference between these two, somebody who is already at the higher level and then somebody who is not, even with the same qualifications. But we're looking at the corporate side. Most organizations still frame communications as a support function and is a service department. They don't see that as a strategic department. So from your perspective, what practical steps can women in PR take to be able to actively reposition ourselves as strategic advisors and not just play the supporting function that they think we are?
Okay, thank you. So I came across a report from McKinsey about women in the workplace, and the research shows that there are a lot of women who are still significantly less likely than men to hold positions with profit and loss accountability. So if there's a position that a woman knows that she's going to be held accountable for the business growth and all of that, we tend to shy away from those positions, which we all know
Right.
that is one of the gateways to executive influence. So if we tend to shy away from things like that, then it means that we cannot get to that level of executive influence. And according to the report, that gap is not about competence. It's not that the women are not competent. but it's just about how the functions in such organizations are being positioned. You understand? So when the value is demonstrated and authority is exercised, then you get to see a lot of women rising up to that position of executive influence. So we get to know that, yes, this is someone who understands the business before the message. So one of the things that as women we can do to reposition ourselves is to make sure that we understand the business before the message. I remember I think it was 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, or last year, during the Women in PR Summit, Auntie Esther gave an insightful conversation or an insightful keynote about how she gets into the nitty-gritty of her the businesses of her clients, no matter the industry that they work in or the industry that they are in. She makes sure that she understands those businesses before taking them on so that once she's drafting a message, she's doing that from a strategic point of view. So that's one thing that we need to put at the back of our minds, that we need to understand the business before the message, because as strategic communicators, we must understand the business models that our organizations are operating with. We need to understand what drives the revenues in our organization. And also, we need to understand what the risk exposures are so that when we are drafting messages or the strategic plans, we are able to include all those risk matrices into the strategic plan that we are putting together. And also, we need to understand the regulatory environment and the stakeholder expectations from for our organizations, which is very important. And also, as a communicator, or as women in communications, one of the things that we should understand is that messaging will always remain operational. And as a business communicator or a strategic communicator, you need to understand the business strategy so that you become indispensable. Once you understand the business strategy, you own the um, you own and run the strategy of the organization. So before anybody wants to dispose you of, they think twice about your impact in the organization. And so that's the first point I'll talk about. And then secondly, I think I would also talk about the shift from messaging to decision intelligence. So Georgina mentioned something about early strategic planning. And so it's very important that communications professionals like us, we must position ourselves to interpret stakeholder sentiment, to make sure that we are bringing insights like public perception data. And now there are a lot of tools that can help you to measure these things. There are a lot of tools that can help you to put together data, or organizations that can help you to put together data for your organization. And we also need to understand the stakeholder risk analysis of our organizations. And then we also have to map issues when it comes to strategic planning, because it also helps us to understand the issues that we are dealing with in relations to other organizations or other competitors, which is very important. So one of the questions we should always be asking ourselves during such leadership discussions or such strategic planning is that what decision are we taking here to protect or strengthen the stakeholder trust of our organization, which is very important. And so the third point I would also talk about is inserting communications early in strategy. In a lot of organizations, communications becomes an afterthought,
I thought.
which is not the best. So before we seek involvement in everything, we should make sure that there's been discussions about communications, about crisis planning, about organizational transformation. When it comes to policy changes and all of that, it's where influence sits. So we should make sure that those are being added, or there's been input from communications into the overall business strategy of the organizations. And so when we sit at the executive table, or when we position ourselves as strategic leaders, then we are able to put in more contributions or put in more effort when it comes to such things. And then communications or communicators are also seen as parts of the C-suite.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. So just to throw more light on what you said, almost everybody is talking about being strategic. We don't have to be reactive, waiting for the others to tell us this thing has happened, so people come and support us. Or when we go and put out the information and then they'll come back to say, Comes, you should have done it this way. We having all the relevant information, what is happening in the organization, in the industry, globally, and then we advising the organization, becoming the strategic advisors, that is where we would have the seat at the table and even stay there. Thank you so much, Phoebe. That was so great. Now, Georgina, let me come to you. So, I want us to talk about the dynamics that a lot of people don't talk about, even if it's being spoken about, it's not done openly. We're talking about navigating resistance. Definitely, there's some form of resistance. There is bias, there is resistance, and then power at the senior levels, which people don't talk about, but is there. It's something we don't see, but is there. In your experience, how have you learned to recognize these dynamics and respond to them? If you could throw more light on that.
Sure. I mean, the dynamics within the corporate world, it's it's a reality. Let me put it that way. And
That's
I'm not
it.
sure that
Yeah.
there's anybody who would say that they are working within the corporate space and will not fall into what we always call corporate politics. And so you have to be able to navigate within that space. And for a PR person, the dynamics tends to be very rough, if I can put it that way. And it's because of what I think Mojo has dissected it. One, there are a lot of women within the space. For example, in my team in Ghana, MTN Ghana, we are seven, is it seven females? So we're a team of seven. And out of the seven, six are females. Only one is a male. So it's female dominated. That's one. And you know that where you have female dominance, people tend to take our contribution for granted. So that's the first step. As soon as people see, or within the corporate settings, people see a female, they feel that you have to justify why you are in that space to be taken seriously. And this is the reason why we have to take ourselves seriously by being strategically positioned, by understanding, the terrain and everything we've spoken about. But most importantly, also having the confidence to manage the space within which you are. Because you will face a lot of bullying from people. And where would the bullying come from? It may not be deliberate, but it's because everybody is protecting their turf, everybody is protecting their space. And of course, we know that in companies, people like to be visible, people like to be seen, people like to be recognized, appreciated, and valued. And very often, I believe that the PR people tend to stand in the way of visibility. And I think that by the nature of our work, we tend to be people that, you know, people would always fight because they think that we are the ones who are always, engaging with stakeholders. For example, if you are in a position where you are also managing government relations, you are managing, the board, you are engaging the media, you are engaging all these high profile people that on a regular day companies will not be engaging. You should know that there's a lot of focus on you. People see you on TV, they see you emceeing programs, doing all of these things. So you tend to be seen as someone who is always visible, someone who is always within their faces. And of course, once you are very visible, you tend to sort of cross the path of people. So I'm just trying to be very practical. The nature of our works puts us within, other people's steps. So you would always be seen as getting in the way of people. Secondly, by the nature of what we do, I mean, if you are positioning yourself, you are advising on what exposures are there. It also means that you also sometimes have to look at what others are doing and advise. So if marketing is coming up with a campaign and you are developing your communications plan, you will definitely look at the exposures. What are the risks to this launch? What are the risks to this product or service? You have to be able to review it based on the insights you have and say, and advice on how, for example, the launch should be positioned. So one of the things that I remember in MTN, anytime there's a pricing change, there's a pricing issue, there's a crisis, I mean, it will not go without a communications input. Okay. And sometimes, depending on what your recommendation may be, people may not find it pleasant. The other thing is that we are always, I don't want to say chipping in on what people are doing. What we do rubs on everybody. You are doing a bit of internal engagements, which is part of your internal communications. You are doing promotions and publicity, which puts you in the space of marketing. You are interpreting, for example, how network, if the network, there are issues with network, you would be talking about how it impacts people and how, for example, the network experience is eroding trust. You will be sharing your reputation results and what customers are saying. It may not be positive, it may not be pleasant. And so sometimes people feel that you are deliberately pushing them down, criticizing them unfairly, or criticizing them. And so you should know that some kind of resistance or friction will arise. What I think PR people should do, and what I have done, is always ensure that you are building strong relationships, which gives you the opportunity to always engage. There's a lot of engagements you have to do internally so that you are able to get the kind of support you need, so people don't see you as opposing them, as fighting them, as taking their publicity. And I think, and these are some of the ways that we get into the dynamics of not always having the kind of support that we think we need. It's because of the nature of our work, what we do. And if you are doing it well, definitely there will be some friction, but you have to ensure that you are able to build strong relationships and overcome them.
I couldn't agree more, and you couldn't have said it any better. Building of relationships, that's so keen. And I always say that I haven't seen any comms person who's not a nice person, because you, even if you are not in a good mood, you need to put up that aura that you are always bubbly, you're happy, because you need these people. You need accounts, you need IT, you need all these various people from different departments to ensure that your work or your role is very critical to the organization. So relationship building, you ending or landing on that point, it's very good. Thank you so much, Georgina. So now, Phoebe, let me move to you. And we're talking about having a seat at the table. So now we're already in the room. There's board meetings. We're going to crisis war rooms. I want you to give us some practical techniques that women can use to genuinely command those rooms. There are some rooms that you enter and you feel intimidated, especially when most of the time is male dominated, not in terms of corporate affairs or communications. Usually the com side, the women are more. But when you get to the high level, the boardrooms, the C-suite meetings, sometimes it can be intimidating. So what practical techniques can you give us to be able to command those rooms when we enter there? They would know that we have arrived, not just physically, but how can we exert that power that we want to, let them see in the boardrooms? Thank you.
Right. So as communicators or as women in communications, one of the things that we need to put at the back of our minds is that the communications or the plans or the strategy that we develop must shape decisions. That is when you have a place in the boardroom. So if you are able to put up such strategies and communication plan, then you have a space in the boardroom because your input must shape decisions and not just decorate them. So that's one of the things we need to put at the back of our mind. And for a lot of people, they think that executive presence is about charisma or volume. And it looks like we often misunderstand what executive presence means. But I'd say personally to me, executive presence should be about clarity, your plans, your communications, your input, your insights must be very clear. It must be data driven, and also it must be credible. And if you want to also have a seat at the table, you should be a credible person. Your A should be your A and your B should be your B. You don't say something and then when an issue arises, you try to look good in the eyes of your leadership or the public and try to throw your subordinates under the bus. If you do that, um, I don't think there will be a room for you at the table because in the boardroom, you need to speak up and you need to own up to the conversation. And if you own up to the conversation and there is a mistake or something goes south, you should be able to take the fall for that. That is what makes you a good leader. And your composure under pressure is also very important. How do you compose yourself when there is pressure, when crises or issues arise? How do you compose yourself? And so for me, I'd say that leading with insights is very important. Make sure that you have you bring to the table very insightful conversations because in the boardroom or at the executive level, insight is valued over information. The insight you bring to the table must be very relevant, talking about the issue at hand, the risk involved, the opportunities that are available, and the recommended action that you are bringing to the table. Because in the boardroom, clarity is expected. So everything must be straightforward. And also, I'd say that we framing communication as risk management is also very important if you want to have a seat at the table. And one of the significant organizational threats in every organization is reputational risk. We talked about corporate reputation earlier. So when communicating with executives, it is very important to frame your input around the reputational exposure of the organization and also media risk and stakeholder backlash. You should have at the back of your mind that what are the consequences that comes with the decision or the strategic plan that we are going ahead with. Also making sure that you consider your regulatory environment. It's very important. And finally, I'll say that as women, if we want to also have a seat at the table, one thing I have learned is to master strategic brevity. So I'll give an example. When I relocated to the UK, my second PR job was with a B2B tech agency. And it was very interesting because this is a new environment for me and I had to learn
Yes.
a lot of tech jargons. I had to learn a lot of tech jargons. And in the tech world, there are different, sectors, even in the tech space, because we were working for clients in cybersecurity, clients in the space industry, clients in fiber optics and telecommunications. So I had to come up to speed to make sure that I understand everything that each of these accounts that I'm working on, I understand what they do and what their business model is about. Because at the end of the day, you are putting together strategic plans for this client. So if you don't understand the environment in which they operate, you don't understand their business model, then your strategic plan will definitely make no sense to them. You are pitching stories to the media, and if you know how it works in the UK or other and countries like the UK and the US, you know that pitching here is very different and it requires a lot of input before your story can land on the table. So you need to have like that strategic insight of what your client is about. And that is what is going to let them listen to you when you are presenting an idea to them. So mastering strategic brevity is very important because one thing I've also learned from my mentors is that the higher you go in leadership, the shorter the conversation becomes.
Right.
So once you are rising up to the ladder, you need to be more strategic and give out more relevant information, clear strategic statements, and not too long explanation. You need to understand the boardroom language, I'll say.
Great. Thank you, Phoebe. You need to understand so that the bottom line is, as PR communicators, if we want to have the strategic leadership, the executive presence that we're talking about, we can't do away with understanding our organization itself. I remember at a point I was working with a car company and I literally had to learn all the terms that the engineers are using. We're doing overhauling. We need to change plugs. We need to do this because
Mhm,
you are the one going to put out the communication out there. So if you don't even understand
mhm.
what the organization is talking about, how would you translate it into a way for the other people to understand? So thank you so much. That's so great. And let me move on to Georgina. We'll wrap up soon. But Georgina, we can't have this conversation without us talking about the people who have helped open doors for us and the people who are still holding the doors open for us. I'm talking about how important is sponsorship and allyship in advancing women's leadership in PR? And also, how can women intentionally cultivate these relationships rather than just waiting for them to come to us? How can we proactively, as we're trying to use that word, how can we build those relationships, those allyships that would help us get to our advancement in terms of our leadership careers?
Thank you, Suzy. So I think that everything we've said this afternoon also shows that relationship building is very important. And so sponsorship and allyship, we take it for granted, but it's really important because without the relationships, we are unable to do what we have to do. We are not able to influence as we should. And so internal sponsorships, internal alignment, internal strategic relationships, as well as external ones, are going to be the game changers. It's always been. And without it, we can't even translate our insights and our data and our strategies into action. So, execution for me depends on our ability to connect with people and as well as the strategies we also interpret. So for me, mentorship is very important. We should have mentors. We should also mentor people. So in building alliances, we also have to ensure that we have people we go to when we need advice because mentorship gives advice. And I think that sponsorship also creates opportunity. And I always say, wherever I have, I speak, I would always say that relationships for me have been my game changer. It's through relationships that I've gotten almost all the roles that I've gotten into. And I remember that right from the onset of my career, the person that I was maybe trained by, who I always call my first communications mentor, is the one who gave me the opportunity even to start, to choose the career, to continue to rely on for advice, and also held me on to be able to move up the ladder. And so these things we should never take for granted, the relationships we build from the beginning and along the line. Because sometimes as we go up the ladder, we tend to forget those who have helped us. But those who have helped us sometimes along the line, you may grow bigger than them, but they may also have a lot of experiences that you would need. So you always need to go back to the people you are connected to, and also don't forget the team you are working with. You may be the CEO, you may be the executive, you may be the director, you may be the head of department, but remember that without your team, you may be the best person. It can be frustrating because without your team you can't really perform, because the execution, you may have the best of ideas and strategies and all that. Imagine that you have to sit in meetings, build partnerships, go and defend the plans you've put together, but who is going to implement them?
Right.
You may be the one reviewing and approving, but you remember that the base has to be strong. And if you have a strong team, it makes your work very easy. And so you have to build your teams to also have the same confidence that you have, so that you can have the opportunity to continue to think and strategize. As a matter of fact, I would say that, I mean, in my weekly meetings, for example, and we have weekly meetings, and it's one of the things that have helped me execute as a communications person, our weekly meetings, and we do it with our agency. Magna Carta is our consulting agency, and I consider them as part of the team. And so they don't sit outside the strategy. We work with them from beginning to end, and they are part of our weekly meetings. And we go through the discussions together, because this is where you sharpen your skills, your knowledge, you share your ideas. This is where you have, the Gen Zs, the interns. In fact, when I have interns, I let them join my team meetings, because trust me, they will give you, the what's happening on the ground. They will tell you what's working. They will give you the insights. They will, there was an intern that we named TikTok. She was always the one who would tell us what is happening on TikTok. Will
Yeah.
you have time to go on TikTok every day and see all the videos? No. You may be the best strategist, but she's the TikToker. And we
Yeah.
name her the TikTok lady, because she'll always give her, she'll say, oh, no, 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 nah, this is not going to work. And we will say, why won't it work? And then she would tell you, and so you need everybody. Don't always, sometimes we are fixated with leadership. We think it's the
Exactly.
CEO who is going to notice us and give us, the promotion we need. But I always tell my team, just focus on your work. If you are focusing on your work and you do the right things, everything that we are talking about, it may take you forever to rise, but you'll be building your skills, you'll be sharpening them, you'll
Right.
be honing them, and the day will come that you'll be needed to make the impact, and you will shine, because you have everybody. You have your team members, you have your superiors, you have the CEOs, you have everybody as your ally. Trust me, it's not everyone who will like you. That one, you can't do much about it. No matter
True.
how you excel, you may do all the things we've spoken about. There are people who will never like you. But you know what? Just focus on your work. Focus on your work. You have your strategy, you have your team members, you have your bosses, and everybody has to manage their boss. Whether you like your boss or not, I mean, you have to manage them. You can't rise above your boss. And I always tell people,
Yes.
unless your boss leaves, and they can leave through different ways. They may resign, they may move on to other things, but don't wish that they will fall so that you rise. It doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen because your boss is your boss. And sometimes people feel they know better than their bosses. And you know that in this environment, you may have a boss who may not be a PR person. There are directors who are lawyers who have never done PR. That's the organization's decision. And I always tell people, it's the business that makes the decisions. We develop the strategies and we execute them. But make sure that your value is seen, and one day you have the opportunity you are looking and waiting for.
This is not the wrap up message, but this is exceptional. Relationship building, it's very, very, very important. I don't know how much to stress on that. Whether you is in the organization, outside the organization, within the industry, connected to the industry, anyway, anyhow, you never know when you need somebody. If you already have that relationship with the person, you can easily call, oh, I need this support, or I need to reach out to this person, I need to get to this person. How can you do that? I remember at a time we're trying to organize a birthday surprise for a customer, a very known customer. And this person is so busy how to get into contact with this person, but we're able to get the person's daughter who knew a colleague. It was such a connected relationship that it made the surprise so exceptional. So it comes back to building relationships. You will never know when and the thing is, you can't say you are not going to need anybody. You have risen to the ladder. You need somebody. One key statement that Emma Wanani from Global Media usually says is her team does all the good work and they make her look good. So you need to build that relationship, build your team up to be able to rise. Now, I know time is already fast spent. Everybody's still in the holiday mood, but I would want us to have one question for both my panel, and then we'll wrap up. So this question is to both Georgina and Phoebe. So we're saying individual women doing the necessary work, but it's not sufficient. It's not enough. It's not being recognized. From an organizational perspective, what structural or cultural shifts need to happen to ensure that women in communications are genuinely integrated into the core strategy rather than just being consulted after the decision has already been made? How can we go about it? Maybe I'll let Phoebe go first, and then Georgina, you can come in next.
Okay. So one of the things that I'll mention or talk about is how organizations must ensure that communication leadership reports at the executive level. And so when it comes to structural change, we have to position ourselves as women to ensure that our influence is being seen and is being felt at the executive level. And also in with respect to cultural change, leadership teams must also recognize that communication as a strategic governance is a strategic governance function. And so if we put that at the back of our mind, we are able to um, work ahead of time. And then in today's world of misinformation and reputational volatility, we should understand that the communications that we put out there is no longer optional, but is an infrastructure for trust building, building stakeholder trust. So that's very important.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. And thank you, Georgina, for this insightful conversation. We couldn't have chosen better panelists than both of you. And these practical sessions, I'm sure people have learned, and then there's so much questions that people have, or it's either we have covered all the topics or all the areas that people want to ask on. But if there are any questions, you could kindly raise your virtual hands and I would call you, or you could also put the question in the chat box and then I would read them out. So we have time for questions. And usually this is my favorite part because this is where people get to ask questions that our panels or during the panel discussions we didn't touch on. We're able to throw more light on that. So if there's any question, please raise your hand and then I will call you. So I'm checking in the chat to see if there's any question. Okay, so am I to think that we don't have any question yet? Nobody? Okay. Awesome. Still waiting for my questions. If there's no question coming, maybe I would ask one question I wanted to ask Phoebe because I thought we would have more questions. So maybe let me get to Phoebe. So we're looking at something which a lot of people, a lot of women would resonate with, especially those that feel particularly stuck. You believe that where you are, Charlie, you're not seeing, you know, the seat up, you're not seeing how to move along. So, what are some of the signals that women in PR is being confined to an operational role? So, when we're capable of doing so much more, what do we need to do to be able to shift this narrative? I know we've said it in different ways, but we are working, but it's more or less we are not being recognized. What can we do? Maybe let's use this to sort of wrap up some of the things that we have said.
Right. So if we want to shift the narrative, I think one of the ways we can do that is by bringing insight to leadership meetings, which I mentioned earlier. So if you are coming to the table or coming to the boardroom or coming to executive discussions, what should you come with as a communications strategist or communications professional? I believe that you should come in with stakeholder intelligence and also strategic recommendations. There should always be some form of reputational forecast as well, because you shouldn't sit down to be assigned with only execution of a strategy that you didn't have any input in. So, as a woman in PR who wants to rise to that executive leadership position or be in that boardroom, we should also make sure that we proactively contribute to risk discussions, which is very important when it comes to strategic PR and strategic decision making. And one of the things that is very important is crisis preparedness is very important and is one of the strongest entry points when it comes to executive influence. And the last point that I'm going to mention is very important, documenting strategic wins as a communications person. This is very, very important. Any win, any input you bring to the team, make sure that you are always documenting them, because one day you would need to give an account or you need to tell your story to position you um at that leadership table. So you should show evidence of how your communications or how your inputs prevented crisis for the organization, how it protected reputation, and how it also strengthened stakeholder relationships. It's very important. There are a lot of us that have done a lot of work in the past, and I worked with Ogilvy Ghana for 5 years, and I also worked with UBA before I relocated to the UK. And just recently, I was sitting down, I wanted to update my portfolio, and there were some works that I did at Ogilvy, working for Visa and some other big organization, Coca-Cola, working on World Cup campaign some years ago. And I wanted those information or the contribution that I did, I added to the team, and I had to run to someone to ask them. But if I had documented all those things very well and kept them, I should have I mean, a good portfolio to run with, not having to go and ask someone else. So it's very important as women in PR that we document our wins as we rise through the ranks.
Yes, thank you so much, Phoebe. We have Mudehi's hand up. Okay, so if
I
Mudehi
just
could.
wanted to come in there in terms of some of the practical things
Okay.
that we need to really arm ourselves with. And I think for me, one of the important one is actually being intentional about your growth. Influence doesn't just happen. You have to, as a person, before other people can actually be there to open doors for yourself. You need to have a plan for yourself as a person and know where you see yourself in terms of whether it's from a career point of view or any other facet of your life. I personally, from my own experience in the organization that I am, I realized early on that yes, I love the industry that I'm in. I love the profession, but I would love to actually practice it outside of the confines of one geography. So I was intentional to empower myself in terms of knowing what is out there outside of South Africa, understanding that our continent is more than just one country. We have 54 markets. What is it that I can be able to do and learn about those cultures that my clients are actually need of that particular support? So being able to then find something that will create a space for me to be an expert, for me to really bring value to the person or to the clients that I'm actually servicing. So that plan that we've been talking about, to have a plan in the business place, you must have a plan for your own personal growth and knowing where you're going. And the other thing I think also it's quite important that you must also know when to leave the stage, when to leave the organization, because sometimes you're sitting there and you end up actually being bitter because you're waiting to be the CEO of the organization or you're waiting to be recognized when actually your season of growth is not in that particular place. So and that goes into really, really getting to know yourself and getting to have the discerning spirit to know where you are and where your own trajectory is going. So sometimes we frustrate ourselves and wanting people to open doors or to see us. And it's unfair because that's somebody else. You are giving your life into a third party instead of actually taking ownership of your own life and understanding where you would like to see yourself. What are your own plans for your life? So I think that's quite important as ladies, especially as women, because I think most of the time also, whether it's in the at home or as we've been groomed for decisions to be made for us, we take that particular kind of mindset also into the working environment. You need to know yourself and also have a plan for your own life.
That's great. You need to know yourself and you need to know how you would also be able to show up for your organization. I'd
So,
like to
Suzy,
take your
can I
final.
come in?
I was going to call you.
I just wanted to add to what has been said and also ending on what Magna Carta CEO said about having a plan for yourself. And I think, this is very important because a number of PR people just, sometimes we are very emotional in our decision making. So we sit and wait and hope that things will change. But I've always said that, talking about executive presence, getting into the room, be invited to the table. And I say that if you are not invited to the table, then create your own table, build
Create
your
it.
own room.
Exactly.
So, and how do you do that? So, for example, I entered MTN Ghana as head of communications. So if you go into a company and you are head of communications, where are you going to? You have two steps. One being the executive. The executive was ceded to the legal people because the organization said, well, the executive has to be is managing, and in MTN we used to have four departments: legal, regulatory, MTN Foundation, communications, all sitting under corporate services. And so it started with communications heading the division, then it evolved into a legal person heading the division because you had the legal people who had to report to a non-legal person. And what I did in the meantime is to, apart from developing myself for the company, I was developing myself as a person, as a
Yourself, right?
communications person. What can I do with the skills that I have built? So, for example, I took to writing. And I had a column in a newspaper. I have my own blog as at now. I have my own websites, www.ladyjoy.net. And I was writing, and out of these writings, I published 2 books. So I became an author. And it puts you in a different category because you have a plan beyond the organization.
Right.
Your life doesn't begin and end with the company, no matter how good it is. And I work for a big company that, we say MTN is the number 1 company in Ghana, but I don't see myself as limited to MTN. I started writing. I published 2 books. I have my own, side consulting. I do media trainings. I do a lot. I go to, schools, I lecture. And very recently, I've set up some non-profit organizations. I do a lot of non-profit work, consulting, and I do advocacy. I have a timekeeping platform. Some of you may have joined, doing the timekeeping dialogue series. And this weekend, I'm doing a session for teachers because the Ghana National Association of Teachers, um, um, the district in Accra invited us to partner with them to talk about timekeeping and women, how women can maximize their time and master their skills using how they manage time. Because people have this perception that, oh, if you are doing things with women, they never show up on time and they do this. So I have that. I have Africans Communicating Africa, which is a network of communicators within Africa that a friend of mine started. So I always tell myself that, you know what, these are the skills I have, and my skills are not limited to my organization. It's for the country, and now the whole world is our audience. You can go beyond your company, go to a national level and do something at the national level. You can do something globally. And guess what? We have a CEO who respects side hustles. He said, HR, put in a policy for side hustles because we know side
Wow.
hustles are real. Every Ghanaian is an entrepreneur. If people are sitting in the office, they are selling, they are showcasing, they will do it anyway. So put in a
Anyways,
policy and let people do it. Guess what? The man one day, our CEO just got up one day and said, we are doing a fashion show. We want to put up a fashion show for all the people who are in the fashion industry. Give us money and put up the runway. And guess what? He modeled the clothes of some of the
Wow.
staff, and some of our executives all modeled. And he said he was going to give 10,000 to the winner. Guess what? There were about, I think, 30 staff who showcased their wares. And when it was done, he said, give everybody 10,000, let them invest in their business.
wow.
Okay, so
Wow.
I'm not saying that this will happen in your business, but I'm saying that we've got to do other things to keep ourselves. I mean, I always say when I get bored, I start something new. It can be a children, I can be reading to children. I go to orphanages, I read to them, I do Christmas parties. Get yourself busy with the skills you have because we are the writers, we are the content creators, we are the event organizers, we are the strategic partners. Why can't we do things for ourselves?
Why not?
But it all depends on the company you are working for. I have a company that is very liberal. You may not have that, but you know what? You've got to do something for yourself. And I agree with Mojo that you have to be very intentional. And same with Phoebe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ah, what a conversation. I genuinely feel privileged to have sat in this seat today to moderate. I don't know those who are behind, but it feels like it's just the 3 of us. Can I please get some reactions? Yes, Viv, can I please get more reactions so that I know it's not just the 3 of us that are here? But honestly, this has been so insightful, very beneficial for me. Today being a holiday, I was just looking forward, trying to read through all that discussions. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. I have a follow-up question, maybe just briefly. because that question can lead to so many things. Georgina, how are we able, or no, personally to you, how are you able to do all this? Because when you're talking, I was just wondering, how are you able to combine work, combine your personal things, combine being you yourself, Georgina, combining family, friends? How are you able to do that? Please, you tell us. Some of us need to know, because sometimes it really gets draining. There are times I literally feel like I don't think I can do this anymore. Sometimes sometimes I feel like giving up. But hearing this, I'm actually motivated that I can do more. So just give us a few tips on how you are able to combine. This one everybody's going to answer. Phoebe, so please prepare. And then Mojo as well, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you so much. Your microphone is muted, Georgina.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
thank
how
you.
how do I balance it? I mean, I ride on my relationships to do a lot of things. So things that I can do for myself, if I'm the only person who can do it, then it means you have to plan for it. So I try to put in a good plan, and I also ride on my relationships. So my family, those who can do some of the things that I do, I'll let them do it for me. I don't have a lot of friends. I don't go out a lot. So I mean something must give. I let my friends know, for example, that I'm not able to respond to all, the 1,001 messages that comes in. I tell people, if you need me to do something or you need me to attend an event and it's so important, please call me. Because sometimes we get into trouble because people say, oh, you are not giving them, you are not attending this old school program, you are not coming to this. I try to do what I can within the space of time that I have. And like I said, I also ride on my relationships. So, for example, I have people, my nanny, as at now, as I'm speaking, I have my nanny who left, got married, and once a while, when I need her to come in because I don't have anybody to take care of my mom who lives with me, she will come in for a week and come and help. So I try to do all that. Whatever I can reassign, I do them. Whatever I can do for myself, I do it. The things that I'm not able to do, I don't do them. And sometimes you may feel guilty. I'm not able to attend a lot of social activities, but the ones that I think I should, I do them. And it also means that you have to just work twice as much as you do. Reading. I try to read a line or two from a books. I have a lot of books around my bed. I'm not able to read them, but I just tell myself, look, even if it's one page, I will read one page before I sleep. I go on walks when I'm not working in the office. So my morning walks, I do them, and during my morning walks, I use it to make my calls. So, for example, if it's not a confidential call, whilst I'm working, I can do them. Even in the office, sometimes I just get up and go around the building. I can go around the building about 4 times just walking because I miss the walk. So I just feel that as women, as you know, we have so many responsibilities. And when I get home, you know what I do? I just lay on my bed for like 30 minutes and I tell everybody, don't come and talk to me as when I enter my room. Let me rest for 30 minutes before I
Yes,
get up and come into. And so even if my husband is hungry, he knows that as for these first 30 minutes, I'm not going to do anything. It's just to
yeah,
catch my breath and breathe
right.
in and take in a little bit of energy. So we just have to try and find a way around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina. So please, Phoebe, just briefly, if you could also touch on that or anything in your final words, we get Mojo and then we'll end the session.
Yes, so just putting in the final words and then also the question you asked. One of the things that Georgina mentioned is if you are not being called to the table, create a table for yourself. And that is meant to say that authority is rarely handed to you if you don't demonstrate it through strategic value. So if you are bringing strategic value to the table, then you'll be called to the table. And she spoke a lot about doing other things outside your organization. And one of the things that I know we've been talking about a lot when it comes to women in PR is volunteering. And so I think as women, as we are learning to rise through the ranks and also sit at the leadership table, one of the things that we need to take seriously is volunteering our skills to organizations that needs them, or to people that we look up to, that we think that we can add up to what they are doing and support them as well. It's very important, and that's one of the way that we learn to sharpen our skills. And also in terms of managing life and work and everything, it can be overwhelming sometimes. Just recently, I took on a role at CIPR Northwest as a budget manager, and about 4 weeks or so down the line, I sat down and asked myself, you always have a lot of things on your table to do. Why did you even volunteer to do this? You are adding up to your stress. But it's something that I owned up to, and I want to do it, because if you want to rise through the ranks, you learn and you volunteer your time as well. So that's also very important. And when it comes to, I try to manage my time as I can. I don't give myself too much stress. When there are days that I'm tired, I close my laptop, I find somewhere to sleep or tune into some Netflix and watch some movies to calm down, because it can be very daunting sometimes. Yes, so I think balancing our social and work life is also very important as women, because it helps us
Absolutely.
when we are rising up through the ranks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Mojo, please, your last words and a response to my question.
I won't take much time because it's Friday in South Africa and the night is calling. So
That is still young.
So really from my side, I always say in terms of time management, you make time for things that you love and the things
Right.
that you cherish. So if it's something that my heart is in it, whether it's people, whether it's project, I gravitate towards that. So it doesn't become a difficult, question to say whether I'm doing it or not. If my heart is not on it, I will decline. But what I also do is that I do not complicate my life by trying to really, really live up to the title. Because sometimes we take a lot of, burden on ourselves just because of the role you actually play and you think
Yeah.
that's who you are. So people can call me anytime on my mobile. If I'm able to respond and answer to them, I do that. It really, really doesn't take away from who you are to be nice to people. So
Yeah.
there's just something that I feel for myself. It's my way of also just giving, of myself and also of growing people within my space to just say, just be a nice human being, just be kind to
Yeah.
people. And if it's not for you, whatever they are calling you about or whatever they need your attention for, you can, nicely so let that particular request pass. So it's quite important, and it's just it makes my space and the energy that surrounds me to be lighter, because then I don't have a whole lot of people thinking, oh my goodness, she's such an ugly person, or this and this
Yeah.
about them. So certain things we create by just being who, how we treat people. So it really, for me, that really, really works. I also have a very, very a good support system at home. I am really,
Okay.
really blessed that I have the kind of family that I have, the helper that I have, and the children that I have who understand the role that I play and the kind
Sure.
of woman that I am. So it's really, really makes my work a little bit easier, as well as the team that I run at Magna Carta. They're very, very understanding. I think at times they wonder, was like, what's wrong with this woman? Because I really let people be. I really trust that if you are serious about yourself, because I always say you must take yourself as a brand. So if you are going to come here and try and think you are fooling me as Mudiehi, you are doing yourself a disservice. So I really, really believe in people who take themselves seriously and honor their words. If you're saying, this is who I am and I'm a account director, I'm capable to operate at this level, I trust that you will be able to do that. And I
Right.
give you the space to do that until you prove me wrong. So those are the kind of things that relieve the stress away from me to then be a micromanager, looking after people, managing them, and
Mm-hmm.
always stressing about where they are. So sometimes we create our own kind of stresses. So I relieve myself of that. So ladies, thank you so much for the time. We can connect offline. I'm quite accessible
Absolutely.
on LinkedIn, on X, wherever the social medias. But I
Yes.
would also love to see you guys when I'm in Ghana. One of these days, I'll wait for the invite as well.
Please do. Please do. Thank you so much. This conversation has been so insightful, so beneficial to a lot of people. So, to Mojo, Georgina, Phoebe, thank you, not just for your time today, but for the generosity with which you shared your experiences, as well as all the honest perspectives that came through. And I know a lot of women on the call, as well as men, have a lot to do about going forward. And also
Yes.
to all of you joining us today, thank you for showing up, for participating, for giving all your reactions to let me know that I'm not alone with my panel and my keynote speaker. Spending 2 hours of your holiday with us, we truly appreciate it. So, one announcement from Women in PR is please look forward to the announcement of the top 10 women in PR for 2025. That will be announced shortly, as well as the Women in PR stars. So, please look forward to that. Without saying much, this is what Women in PR Ghana is about. It's not just about celebrating women, but it's about equipping, it's about challenging and advancing us. And trust me, this work continues. We are going to lead with authority, influence with intention, and then take up every inch of space we have earned, and even create our own table if that table is not handed over to us. So thank you so much, ladies, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. All right. It's a wrap,
Thank you
everybody.
for
Thank
having us
Thank
you.
you so much. Thanks to my
Bye.
fellow
Bye.
Thanks,
team.
everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.